Now is the time. A time you'll look back on. A time you adopt as inspiration. You will recollect this time. This moment, right now. Motivate yourself towards success. Overcome. Take over. The time is now.
Good evening and welcome to Loaded Mag special with Keith Hackett. Unfortunately, everyone in the chat and watching live, you are stuck with just myself from the hosts tonight. Unfortunately, the rest of the lads have got other commitments tonight. But luckily, I've got a special guest to join us in a few minutes who will be able to take my big, ugly face off the main screen and then dumb that down for all of you. But first of all, I've got a little task for you all, because as Daz mentioned last night, we have got a fantastic new sponsor in the Geordie Rise, and it's Dean who's actually promoting it. It's his brand, the Geordie Rise. What I'd like you all to do, if you would be in with winning a chance of winning the first ever limited edition T-shirt that Dean is actually selling, it's actually going to be given away on the channel, which is this one here. And it's all about the 1 anniversary of the takeover. So this will not be going on sale until October. But if you want to be in with a chance of winning this, I need you to do two things. One, I'll be able to deal with tonight, and Dean's going to deal with the rest either later tonight or tomorrow. And we'll announce the winner on our Twitter channel tomorrow. I need you to put the initials TGR in the chat. And I also need you to go over to the Geordie Rise on Twitter and give them a follow. Once we've done that and we collaborate with Dean tomorrow, we'll announce the winner and we'll get that T-shirt sent off to you at some point this week. So go and give them a bit of a sponsor, a bit of love there, and hopefully get you in with a fantastic T-shirt as a prize giveaway there for you. So we've got our special guest Keith Hackett right now. Now this is the second time he's been on the channel. So we're going to brush over what happened in December last year to start off with, for why we actually brought this show to you. And then we'll get into the nitty gritty of the season so far. We won't just necessarily touch on VAR itself. We will actually go into officiating overall, because obviously there has been some horrendous decisions given by the on-field referee that hasn't been eligible to go to VAR as such. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll bring our guest Keith into the stream. Good evening, Keith. Good evening, Keith. Thank you very much for joining us again. It's a pleasure to have you on the channel again.
Delighted.
Yeah, it was as I said, the first show that we had in December when you came on, when there was that influx of terrible refereeing decisions and VAR decisions back in December, which we'll briefly touch over before we get into the nitty-gritty of the new Premier League season. But it was a really good success, and obviously with what's happened over the last few weeks, we thought it would be fantastic to get your point of view on everything that's going on, what we can do to possibly rectify it, because obviously there's a new appointment coming in at the end of October, November, and hopefully how we can make VAR, which seems to be fantastic technology, but implemented better. So if we go back to when you first appeared on the channel last December, now there was 3 major games that had talking points for Newcastle. Now I'll start off with the first one, which is probably the less of all the offences that took part. It was when Newcastle played away at Leicester, and there was a penalty given for an alleged foul on James Maddison, which when actually, the referee didn't give anything. It went to VAR. They gave a foul when you can clearly see there's hardly anything to make him go down. Now, first of all, for me, that was a terrible decision. What did you think of that decision, Keith, when you saw it? I know you probably have to flick through your brains and go back to the game, but you might remember the decision, you might not.
Well, it was a wrong call, wasn't it? And I think generally we've seen too many. I think at that particular time, Newcastle had some pretty awful decisions against them. And look, I worked for a couple of years in the Northeast, so I was amongst a workforce that were either Newcastle or the other side, and I'm not going to mention who they are because I know that offends. But, you know, so I know the passion. I know going to St. James as a referee, going there as the boss of the PGMOL, the passion runs through very strongly. And I don't know. I don't know whether it's the air, the sea mist or whatever, but yeah, that was an awful decision.
It was, wasn't it? And then a few days later, we get into another one which we discussed in great depth on the show, and it was the trip to Anfield where Newcastle lost 3-1. Now, the first major talking point was the fact that Mike Dean was appointed as the referee in charge. Now, for Newcastle fans, we felt there was a conflict of interest there to start with because Mike has, made it well known that he's a Tranmere fan, which is obviously 6 miles away just across the Mersey, still on Wirral side. But his family, his sons, were actually Liverpool fans and had Liverpool season tickets. So for us, before the game even kicked off, we thought there was a conflict of interest in him being appointed. And I know you also felt that it was a terrible appointment, even whether he was potentially impartial anyway, that by putting him in that situation, by just whereabouts he lives, you're putting him in a difficult situation even before balls kicked off. Then as the game went on, there was a couple of horrendous, I've got down, there was 3 really, really bad decisions in the game, full stop. There was Newcastle had just taken the lead and a corner came in and Isaac Hayden went down with a head injury in the box. Mike Dean allowed the game to play on. And from obviously the Liverpool didn't want to put the ball out of play. Obviously, it's up to their discretion. And as you know, you always play at the final whistle. They put the ball in and they actually scored an equaliser from it. Of course, Newcastle team and fans were in uproar because there's a head injury in the middle of the pitch. And that's, that's, for Mike Dean, that's one of the one decisions he's meant to stop the game there and then for a head injury. Sure enough, he didn't. Later in the second half, there's a foul inside the box on Ryan Fraser from Trent Alexander-Arnold, and nothing's given on the field. VAR say that there's nothing to actually overturn, but then you actually look at the replays and you can see he went through Fraser to get the ball, and then you start to think it's going to be one of those days again. It was a close match as it was when that decision made. And then the final one that was the biggest kick in the teeth, I think, overall on that game was the long-distance shot from Trent Alexander-Arnold, which was ended up being the third goal, where Mike Dean decides to run across the shot and blocks it. If you remember that one.
I do remember that.
There's, 3 horrendous decisions in one game, but obviously the fact that Mike Dean was actually refereeing in the first place surely should have been avoided because of the potential conflict of interest. What's your thoughts on that, Keith?
I think it's an interesting one. I have to say that I was brought up where, we wouldn't referee. I mean, I think I refereed Chesterfield once. There was even a question once on me refereeing at Middlesbrough because I was deemed a Yorkshire referee. And I can remember refereeing at Leeds only once because we weren't appointed to games that were in the same county generally. We certainly were not appointed to teams that were only a few miles away. That has changed. Has it changed for the better? I'm not so sure. I think that when we look at Mike Dean, in my period in office, Mike Dean was appointed to the FA Cup final before the semi-finals were played, and Liverpool were in one of those semi-finals. I wasn't doing the appointing for the FA Cup. That's the FA. And I said to the FA, I think you've made a genuine mistake here, that there's a conflict here that could apply and pressure could come on. And we want to avoid that. At the last minute, we just want to avoid that potential. And of course, Mike Dean, Liverpool did get to the final. Mike Dean was taken off the FA Cup final on that basis, that there was a potential conflict. Now, under the stewardship of Mike Riley, we've seen, and I'm not questioning the referee's integrity here, but it's the exposure. It's you people, the fans saying, "Cool, he's down the road." You know, this is like Anthony Taylor. Anthony Taylor refereeing Manchester City and Manchester United. You know, okay, he's an Altrincham football supporter. I know that for a fact. So there is a form that I instigated when I took over the PGMOL. And on that form, every season it was updated. The referee had to put the city where he was born and the club that he supported. And that would then be a no-no. So I think that the organisation has changed, and they do put referees close to the city where they live. And I think for me, that's shouldn't happen. You know, but if it's going to happen, then, and you're going to apply it, well, why doesn't Michael Oliver referee at Newcastle United? But we know that Michael is an out-and-out Newcastle fan. He puts it on the piece of paper. He declares it. So I think the integrity is not in doubt, but don't put the referee in potential conflict. Try and put him into a position where he's going into that game as a complete neutral and there's never going to be a question asked on it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's like, you know, I think that's one of the things that annoy Newcastle fans is that two of the best referees over recent years in Mark Clattenburg and Michael Oliver, both Newcastle fans who've it's been acknowledged of being the head of the Premier League referee skill, you know, officiating when they've been there, but they've never been able to officiate our games because of their allegiance. And it's good that they've been honest about it. And I think, you know, you go back to, you know, when Howard Webb comes in and what the point that you actually mentioned, which I think is a fantastic thing, that Howard Webb, it's a simple thing that you can bring back in is you can't referee within a, you know, a certain radius of your home postcode or something like that, or county or whatever, because as you said, nobody's, you know, thinking about are they corrupt on that fact, because, you know, and avoid anything that might bring it up. But the fact is, when you see it happening to fans who can obviously, because social media is so big nowadays compared to what it used to be when you were refereeing, Keith, you know, it's easy to find out, you know, I remember supporting Liverpool and stuff like that. That becomes it. So to me, you know, you were right. You go back to a little bit old school and you say, look, you just don't referee within 50-mile postcode of your home address or something like that. And then you just take that out of the equation, and fans can't grumble about it and stuff like that. And of course, if they're a fan of a certain team, they live in, say, the amount of Man United fans that live in London, for example, you know, you obviously you might there, but if you say that you're a Man United fan, then obviously you won't be able to referee them anyway, or Man City or whatever it's classed as. So,
but you know, one point here is that just to so that the listeners understand, when I took the PGMOL over, the first thing I did was, one, give them mobile phones, two, give them laptops, and stated very clearly that they couldn't gamble on football worldwide at any level. And you know, that level of integrity also went to the point where, if need be, we could actually, under the things that we did, we could interrogate their bank balance. So there were very clear checks and balances that I put in place with regard to integrity issues. There was also a product called Prozone, and they couldn't escape from Prozone because the big clubs had it. But it gave me every decision that they made under video and under a technology recording system, so that we were able to interrogate the performances very, very closely. And that, in fact, at times enabled me then to go out publicly and say, look, this referee's got it right or he's got it wrong, or question the level of fitness, because that information was that from that we knew that referees, you know, I brought in sports psychologists, nutritionists, vision scientists, all that a player got to ensure that they were giving us optimum performance. But I think the appointments are really important. And I used to do the appointments because I'm the guy, I was the boss of the PGMOL in the firing line. And somebody, you know, others might say, well, I'd like to do it. I'll take some of the workload off you, Keith. No, because I had a simple policy that ran in parallel to a manager. So if you've got a really good number 9 and he goes off form, what the manager will do, get his coaching staff in and say, right, okay, have him on the football field and give him some operational advice. You know, have him hitting balls against the target or whatever, those sort of things. In the same way that I used to say, right, take the referee out of the firing line and he needs some operational advice. And that might be fitness. It might be a weight issue. It might just be that they need a break. So all those sort of things were part of the process to ensure that a referee prepared thoroughly. But he also understood very clearly that a poor performance meant no appointment. And how that reflected was in what they earned, because they had a basic salary. Then there was a merit table. And the merit table might surprise you, because this week I've really upset a lot of referees because I've said I don't object to former players being on a VAR panel. I don't object to that. And everybody says you can't do that. But then what they've forgotten is that in my tenure of office, we had assessors assessing referees like policemen, policing policemen when they do wrong. And no matter what you do, you don't get the right message across. So what I did was, with the full blessing of the Premier League, independently got them to appoint a panel of ex-players and ex-managers. They would go to games and they would examine and interrogate that performance and mark. So there was a list of assessors' marks. There was a list of delicate marks. Where did that referee figure?
Which I actually believe that Steve Howie does, doesn't he? Because obviously he's an ex-Newcastle player, and I believe he's done some referee assessing along that sort of role, hasn't he?
Correct. Because it continues, because it was deemed to be a good system. That is why this weekend I've said we need a mix, but we also need a mix before we get into the meat of it. You know, what is wrong is you can't referee a football match on a Saturday and then be VAR the following day. You just can't, because you've got the baggage of the previous game. You need the physical recovery. You need to prepare for the next match. All those sort of things from a sports science point of view. And that's what is basically wrong. What we need to have, and is an independent panel of VAR operators that have got the knowledge of the laws of the game. They understand the game, and there's no relationship, if you like, initially between referee and different to that between the referee and the assistant referee. Yeah. So, you know, when we examine the decisions this weekend, everybody knows that Joe Willett was pushed into the goalkeeper by an opponent. And so the goal was ruled out. A good goal was ruled out. Now, okay, if we get the referee, he's looking through a crowd, he's not probably aware and can't see it. But VAR has got cameras, it's got viewing angles not afforded the referee. Now, I've examined thousands of decisions of referees, and they do make mistakes. And the reason they make a mistake, a referee, is they don't see what others see, because the view is blocked, or they're not in the right position with the right viewing angle, and they can't guess. And the process of a referee is to see, recognize, think, and act. That's the process. So I can only assume that Salisbury, one of the newer guys on the block, has not seen that push by Joe Willett. And then you have to say, why has Mason not come in and clarified it? Why have they not seen it? Why have they not seen that a foul has taken place and the ball is in the back of the net? And any good referee will tell you that's a goal. But then what we get is we get some of the nonsense, don't we? We get the Premier League saying, well, we're going to investigate it all. Does your listeners understand who and what the professional game Match Officials Limited is? It's funded by the FA, the Premier League, and the Football League. They are the three board directors, along with either the general manager in my case, or in the case of Mike Riley, the managing director. They are the PGMOL. It's like a subsidiary. Mm-hmm. We're going to investigate it. There's no need to investigate it. This has been going on this is the 4th season, and we're not seeing any real advancement in how VAR is operating in this country. Let me tell you.
I think if anything, Keith, that you'd probably find, obviously going back over the last 4 years, you seem to be hearing more and more problems with VAR as it goes along. From the amount of, and obviously there was talk today on Sky Sports saying about how many decisions that they've got right last season, how many they've got right so far this season. It was interesting to see that they didn't put down how many errors, clear and obvious errors, that also made as well that wasn't cleared up by VAR. It was only going towards putting the positive spin on everything, which that's positive marketing, and that's how you do. You try to sell your brand. But as I mentioned on our show the other day, now obviously, as I said, I've got a few things to discuss, not just about VAR, but officiating in full stop. But I think one of the biggest bugbears for myself, and I know a lot of fans like this as well, is obviously the Premier League and the Football League are paying a lot of money to the PGMOL, for obviously the VAR funding and stuff like that. And if everyone seems to think that the Premier League is the elite football league in the world, but the state of officials in the game are probably to say some Sunday League referees could maybe possibly do a better job because of how bad it is.
Well, I think we have to understand the pyramid that exists where, if we take myself, I was 12 years refereeing at grassroots level. Michael Oliver, something like eight years. And then you progress through that system, you progress it either into the Northern Premier League, the Northern League, the Yorkshire League and the Northern Premier for me, and then onto the Football League as an assistant referee. Then you become a referee. It's a long-winded process where you've got a great deal of experience. When you get to the elite end, the balance is that you've got a minimum 22 cameras at the game. And this is why the referees need the technology. But the technology needs to be used in the correct manner. And you need to take out a lot of things to get the change. Now, what we've got, first of all, is we've got a relationship problem between referee and assistant referee. They're and VAR. They're too remote. So for me, this building at Stockley Park, wherever it is in Middlesex, I want it closed. I want to operate like most of the MLS, where the actual VAR guy will be in the car park at St. James's or in a room at St. James's operating the VAR system.
A bit like what Peter Walton does for BT Sport on the live kickoffs.
Yeah.
On a Saturday
exactly.
lunchtime. Yeah.
I want the VAR to arrive at the same time as the referee. I want that VAR to operate with that referee all the time. Because I want the VAR to be a VAR guy only. I don't want him to be a referee. He's been a referee, right, in the main. But I want him to be a VAR specialist, just like we've got assistant referee specialists. And I introduced the referee and the two assistants operating on a regular basis because I wanted team accountability. It's no different than running a business, If you're on a workbench and you're a mechanic and you've got other mechanics around, you work as a team on a car. If you're building, cars at Nissan, you've got a criteria. You're on a line. You're moving at speed. You get used to it. You do things naturally. And I know we paint pictures and we can go on forever, and I will, because this weekend I thought was a disaster, and you can't hide. You can't hide from an incorrect decision. What you have to do is you have to determine how was that error made. And the only way you do that is, first of all, you take the VAR, just like, I've come off matches and there's been a question over an offside decision, a linesman's decision, or even a decision that I've made. I've gone into that dressing room and I've said, right, lads, let's talk through this decision. It looks as though we got it wrong. What did you see from your angle? What did you see from yours? I think your flag was a bit premature. That discussion isn't to set ourselves up to have answers. It's to actually clarify in our own mind whether we got it right or wrong. And I want the VAR in that process. I want the VAR and the AVR to be at the stadium, to walk on St. James like the referee does, like the assistants do, and the fourth official. Walk round the geography of the stadium, begin to feel the atmosphere, get the pre-match instructions, the team sheet exchange, then they depart into the room. If that's the bus or the room, whatever it is, they depart. At the end of the match, they all come together. So if we take that incident at St. James's, we can start a dialogue, and that dialogue has to have a degree of honesty. Otherwise, you don't advance.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that has to happen sooner rather than later. Now, when we actually go back, somebody said to me today, well, they're good referees. They can referee, they can VAR. I go, well, why does the World Cup, why at this upcoming World Cup and the last one, did they have a panel of VAR specialists? Because they sit them in a room, they go through every decision that's made in the tournament, week by week, day by day, as a group, individually, and they discuss. That's an error. How can you avoid it in the future? That's the natural progress of refereeing, to examine what you've done and how you can do it better. What does Eddie Howe do on a Monday or Tuesday with his players? He's got details of the games, how they played, how they defended, how far they were off his tactics. And then they went out, they go out on the football field and try to rectify those errors and prepare for the next game. Refereeing is no different, but it is in England. We're not doing it right. A lot of the things I put in place, they don't do anymore. And now I'm not the saviour, but what I am is, with 50 odd years and having managed the likes of Clattenburg and Webb and Dean and others and brought them onto the list. Look, if they didn't perform, they didn't get an appointment. That's the first thing. So what we've got is we look at it and we go, right, Lee Mason hasn't got a game this weekend, but he had two. So he had that game. He had the game at Newcastle. Then the following day, he was on the Man United Arsenal game. And what we've got, we had Chelsea West Ham, that Bowen incident, which was perfectly legal, a goal ruled out. But like Gillett will referee this weekend. So you see, there's no accountability. There has to be. There were in my day, because you didn't get a game. It's simple as that.
Yeah.
And I think,
I think that's one of the things. I think it's, a lot of fans are a bit dismayed that they want accountability for referees. They would like I know it's something that we discussed about on the last show and this is something that Howard Webb might possibly bring in towards us. We discussed about miking up referees. And I know that was something that you thought, obviously they're already mic'd up so they can hear each other. But when the VAR comes out, a bit like what rugby union do,
exactly.
is you can actually hear it. Because then what that does is everybody can hear the decision-making process, what's going through, what's being talked about. I think it was a good interview with Nigel Owens on TalkSport this morning. I don't know if you heard about it, and he was talking about it. What the referee, the VAR needs to realise that they are there to assist the referee. They are not there to overrule them, get the better of them, try to prove them wrong or whatever. They are there to assist them. And by doing that, they show them every single angle. So it's like if you go back to rugby union, there's a debatable try, and you can hear them go through it and they'll say, have you got another angle for me? Have you got another angle for this? And they'll talk through it. And I think especially for the one that's on Saturday, which really, really aggrieved Newcastle fans, was the one angle that apparently VAR weren't able to show, but the TV cameras could show the fans at home and stuff like that, was the clear one where you can actually see the push coming. You can actually see the ball coming across from Sven Botman. It's about to go right on Joe Willock's head. And then if you go back to the picture itself, when obviously we've got a still here of it, it's just literally after the push. But even if you look at Joe Willock's body language there, you can see obviously where he's being pushed, because you wouldn't be going for a header, curving back on yourself. It's an unnatural body position to start with. And obviously by the time the ball actually gets to where he would have been, there's a full yard difference. Now, players not, at a professional level wouldn't miss a ball by, for me, even though I was looking at it as a referee without having the VAR to look at it, they wouldn't misjudge a ball by that much, especially with that. And then the fact that there was none of the Crystal Palace players actually putting their hands up and saying whatever. But the fact that they don't show this angle, and also what you can also query is, where is the linesman in this one? Because he would have had a fantastic angle of, because he'd have been looking along the line for any potential offsides. He would have seen that push from Mitchell as well. So surely it's not really for Lee Mason to come in and not give Mike Salisbury, as we've already said, he's an experienced referee at Premier League level. I think he's only refereed 7 Premier League games. And yes, we all understand they've got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
If you want your experienced, someone who you think is an experienced referee who's supposed to be supporting you as the on-field official and giving you all the tools to succeed at your job, sometimes it feels as though Lee Mason's basically shot Mike Salisbury in the foot here, because people are going to start thinking, well, what about his performance? His performance was appalling. He hadn't really given the decision on the VAR. He was looking to get it. It was Lee Mason that reached out and saying, you need to go and look at this. But then he showed him the right tools. So do you hold Mike Salisbury accountable for that? Or would you say it's more Lee Mason that needs to be held accountable for it, because he hasn't done the job with the tools that he's got available to actually support the on-field official?
Well, I think ultimately the VAR has come in incorrectly. So if we're saying that it hasn't got the angle that we saw, then why did he rule out the goal? Why did he want the VAR across? The goal was okay. He didn't foul the goalkeeper. He came into the goalkeeper. It's a subjective decision. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what's wrong here is, and look, I did a radio show with Nigel Owens 2-3 years ago. Very articulate, very knowledgeable guy. At the time, I was saying, I want VAR operating the same way as rugby. Look, we didn't have communication kits. And I listened on TV and thought, what's that? And watched, went to Twickenham, asked the IRB, could I listen in to the referees? Yes, I could. And watched it all, came away and said, I want communication kits. So with VAR, it's simple. Just involve the fans and let us all listen in and watch the process, rather than this pregnant 4.5 minutes this weekend to determine whether a player is onside or offside. Well, if I were in the local park as a referee with no assistant referees and I took 4 minutes to make a decision, the guys would be walking off, or they'd be walking in my direction, all 22. I think that we should not look for excuses here. We need a system that we know works in Italy. We know it works in Germany. We know that Howard, because of a guy in America called Greg Barkey, who manages the VAR system for Howard, we know that Howard is a good communicator. So they do a weekly show. They do a weekly show of the VAR decisions. They run through them, examine them, and say and show how they come to the decision. Dead simple. When they brought VAR in, they've not changed the criteria. It's clear and obvious. So what you do is you sit down every week, as I did with referees on foul challenges, for example, or acts of simulation, and you show video after video after video, and you literally get the guys agreeing what is a foul, what isn't a foul. And you sit the VAR, all the referees in that same room and say, this is a clear and obvious error, this is not. So the first thing is, they're indulgent. If they go through a game that they've not been used, fine. They don't have to look for trouble. You know, Michael Oliver was perfectly positioned to award correctly a penalty kick. The player tried to save it. He's seen it, he's given it. How can another experienced referee say he's got it wrong? Because he hadn't. It wasn't even iffy. It was nailed on. So in fairness, we saw probably only for the second or third time since its inception, someone with a pair that's gone and said to the VAR, get lost, mate. I'm giving the penalty kick. But his review process afterwards must be, why did you come in? That's not him being arrogant. He's tried to put him in jail. And this applies regularly. You know, the question then in the Brentford Leeds game is the opposite. Why didn't the VAR come in? Why didn't David Koo, an experienced referee, why didn't you come in and say this was a penalty kick at Leeds? Because it was nailed on. And the referee didn't give it. So if you think, your fans are unhappy, how do you think I feel as a former referee, seeing the standards falling like a stone, and now in the fourth season and still not operating VAR? And this is what happens. This week, Anthony Taylor will referee the biggest Champions League game this week, right? Guess what? UEFA are saying we're not operating VAR, right? Because there's a German VAR operator on his game. So with English match officials, they're going to have a German VAR. Because UEFA say Germany have got it right, Italy have got it right, and that's why we haven't even got a VAR guy at the World Cup. But Oliver and Taylor will be the referees at the World Cup. So I think ultimately at the end of the day, there's been a lack of leadership for the last 2 or 3 years, a lack of support of referees. I could talk at length about Mike Riley. I'm not going to get into a personal vendetta. I haven't got a vendetta against him. I do know that he allowed Howard Webb to retire far too early. And I do know that the support for both him and Clattenburg out of that organisation was poor. And, I'm not taking any credit because they did their own talking on the field of play because they were outstanding referees. But, when somebody rang me from UEFA and said, Keith, we know you're no longer with the PGMOL. What's your view on Mark Clattenburg? And I've gone, well, it's the same view that you've got. And that is that he's our best referee at that particular time. He was in top form. Use him. And they did. He went on and got the finals, So Mark should be involved with the English game. Right?
Definitely.
He's still good enough to referee. And if he don't want to referee, he should be with Howard managing this lot. Because the standards need to be at that level. You want at least 10 referees in the Premier League that are world class. Because look, this is the finest competition in the world. It's the best league in the world by far. It's the most competitive. It's broadcast around the world through about 45 television companies. And if you saw my inbox, this Monday morning. It was absolutely incredible. And if you then, the Daily Telegraph, I write a weekly column regularly, and I said, look, I want to take a different approach. We know that those decisions are wrong, and I can castigate those officials, but I want to tell you this, and I gave them, I sat down and said, right, what I'll do is I'll write an article that gives you a 7-point plan of what needs to happen in order to get somewhere a better performance out of these referees. And I'm just trying to find it. Bear with me, I've got it somewhere. Because that plan is about, first of all, appointing somebody in charge. So who is in charge of VAR operators? I know ultimately it's the managing director, but if you're at Nissan or anywhere else, the guy who's at the top hardly gets any questions. It's the ones down below that are on the shop floor that have to deal with it, the line managers. So who is the line manager that's operating VAR? Because he needs firing. I don't care who it is, he goes. And we get someone into the position that can do the job. And we get a degree of accountability. That's the first thing. The second thing is close Stockley Park and bring it to the stadiums. Bring it where they've got a feel for the match and they operate as a team. And that VAR works with that referee because he's a VAR specialist. He doesn't do anything else. He's not a linesman. He's not an administrator. He's not a coach. He's VAR. And if we want to mix, like Aaron Shearer said at the weekend, let's have 1 or 2 players on the panel. I don't have an issue with that. I don't have an issue at all. I'll sit them down for a few weeks and I'll give them training and say, right, fine. Then we operate a line accountability. And that is, at the games we can analyse and post-match we can analyse. And the best VAR operators get the games. And we want to improve performance, and the only way you improve performance is through communication. And so they've got to bring in the big screens. And yet, I heard today that currently FIFA and the IFAB don't want it. They don't want that. Look, they didn't want communication sets and they didn't want goal line technology, but they've got it because as a boss of the PGMOL, I had to fight for it. And you don't just give up when somebody says don't have it because you've got to argue your case. So I think we clearly need an independent panel with a boss, with an appointment process that's better than the current one. And we've got to have a level of accountability. If they're not good enough, they moved on. We don't play games. And that's the same with refereeing. And, people say, well, that won't happen. Well, it happened on my patch. You can go back and look at the records. Andy D'Urso was a Premier League referee. He dropped down to the Championship and became quite a better referee in the Championship than the Premier League, just like players. There's some players, you see some players at Newcastle and you think, well, they were good in the Championship, but now we're in the Premier League, not quite cutting it.
Yeah.
So we've got to bring in new players. Refereeing is no different. There's some people who can perform on the big stage and others who can't. So they're human beings. So, the coaching is important. The accountability is important. The appointments are important. But, we can't wait until Howard comes in. Because by then, the season's nearly over at Christmas. Mm-hmm. So what are they going to do?
I think another interesting topic to bring up about regards to the accountability side of things, Keith, is that because obviously the PGMOL and all the officials they're responsible for what technically is multi-million pound decisions, realistically, because we've seen in the past where teams have been relegated due to officiating errors and stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but say, for example, I don't think or Newcastle or West Ham are going to be in a relegation mix towards the end of next season, but they could be in and around European places, for example, which obviously has more financial ramifications because the following season they'll get income from UEFA for playing those competitions. And to be fair, even placings in the Premier League are multi-million pounds, and wherever the place in the league at the final table is worth about £2.5 million per place as well. So now, obviously, for Newcastle and Crystal Palace, they've technically lost points that they were due to errors that the PGMOL have actually admitted to, which is, to be fair, is very rare that they actually do come out and admit to an error, but they have done this week. Now, what can be done to rectify that? Because it's all right and good to say, yes, we got this wrong, we apologise, we'll make changes. Do you think there could be something brought in place or might even happen? Because it was brought to my attention the other day that a game was actually made to be replayed. I think it was when Carnu was played for, was it Arsenal?
Yes. Against Sheffield United.
That's right. And then because of what actually happened, they actually replayed the game, didn't they?
Yeah. That was instigated by Arsenal rather than the authorities. That was Arsenal saying this was a throw-in where the player, they got we had an agreement where the ball was thrown back to the opposition, and in fact what happened was they threw it bounced, an Arsenal player picked it up, put it in the back of the net, and it was carnage. And then Arsenal, in fairness, came out a few days later and said, look, we would be happy to replay that game, which they did.
So going back on that, because obviously Newcastle have actually put in an official complaint because of what happened at the weekend. And I know West Ham feel exactly the same about their result against Chelsea. Do you think that it could be a possibility where the game's made to be replayed because of the decision? Or do you think it could be, obviously, I don't think it'll be too late for these two games. Going forward, do you think that they might bring in something where another topic that was mentioned was those two teams have been deducted. Obviously, they've had points taken off them unfairly. Now, obviously, it's unfair to take points off the teams for the actual how the result ended, as in Chelsea and for Palace at this stage. But obviously, Newcastle lost 2 points and West Ham lost a point. In retrospect, could you award those points at a later date? But also, there's stuff like in cricket where you have on-field reviews decisions where you have a time to make a decision.
Yeah.
I came up with a suggestion and put on Twitter that the other day about at the end of a game, and it's a bit similar to how you've got with horse racing, where you can have something called a steward's inquiry, where you can get both managers from each team, get the officials together, and obviously if you're mentioning what you said about having VAR with you in the actual building as well, you can come to a decision then. And so the result, if that decision, as we saw on Saturday, you could actually, when that final whistle goes, you can actually say for 15 minutes that result is pending on the basis of, say, a steward's inquiry. So the managers and the officials would get together, talk it through. The officials would then come out, and as you want to say, for accountability, and say, look, we have made an error here. We realise that Newcastle should have won that. That goal's been disallowed. We award the goal, and then obviously, Newcastle would win 1-0 or something. Is that something that's a possibility in your eyes, or that could help to, it would mean that fair results are actually done? Because
I understand where you're coming from, but I think it's massively dangerous territory because we can argue that a player stood in front of the net has failed to score and put the ball in the back of the net, and that's had an outcome on the game. I see where you're coming from, but I do not see any energy within the governing body, FIFA, to allow that to happen. I know that in Italy, they've had, on the odd occasion, a game replayed, and I think on one occasion they've sort of awarded the game to the opposition. But I think here, honestly, what we have to do is we have to ensure that the match officials are going to give an optimum performance. And I think that what we have at the moment is with too few referees in the panel. I operated with about 20 odd referees, which allowed, if you like, a level of accountability. Now, we talk about taking people out of the firing line or dropping them down. The reality is that sometimes I took referees off a game. Well, I didn't appoint them to the game to begin with, in many instances, because I wanted to see how they performed on that particular weekend. I'm not ducking the issue, but I can't see at this moment in time an energy within football to allow that to happen. But I do understand where you're coming from, because one of the differences, for example, with the MLS, it's a closed company in a sense. There's no promotion relegation in the MLS, where you have seen the impact of relegation at the Premier League level, when it impacts massively on employment of people that run the club, for example, and all those sort of implications. No, I think we have to get back to the basics, and probably not the answer you wanted. I think that ultimately the referee's got to be the person in charge, and the game has got to ensure that the very, very best officials walk out on Saturday afternoon. Now, let me tell you what I was saying 2 or 3 years ago. Because 2 or 3 years ago, I was actually saying, because we had a lack of talent, and to some degree we still have, I was actually saying to the people who asked me, I think we should bring in overseas referees. We import players of quality. Why don't we import referees? If there's a top Dutch referee or a French referee, whoever it is, not getting into personalities, we just say, come and referee in our competition this week. So that I think that what will eventually happen is that refereeing will move to on a European scale, so that in a sense we're able to take the opportunity of using referees from other countries. There's a massive reluctance to do that, because it could well have a negative effect on some of the referees that are coming through. But then the other side of it is there's measurement tools that can tell you very clearly if the referee's up to the job. Look, one of the good referees we've got is Andre Mariner. He's a safe pair of hands.
I think a lot of Newcastle fans might be debatable after last week's performance.
Well, listen. Yeah, I understand that. You've jumped in before I finish my point.
Okay, go on. Sorry.
This guy is now over 50 and has lost all his mobility. So when a referee is unable to keep up with play and gets detached from play, he's not going to get the viewing angles. Therefore, how can he make accurate decisions? That's the point. He's a nice guy, and he's been a good servant to the league. But if you're greyhound racing or you're racing horses, there's some great horses. They've got some great names, but at some point they're retired because they're not going to win the big races. And you stop feeding them here, and that's how it has to be. The succession planning has not been in place really in the last 3 or 4 seasons, and there's lots of reasons behind that. And some of the referees now, we've got a group of relatively young and new referees onto the patch. Understand that they may have done 10 years of refereeing at the Championship and Football League, but when you hit the Premier League, it's different, and therefore the decisions come quick and fast. The interrogation of every decision is made, and you want the very best referees. Mm-hmm. And the benchmark was set by Webb and Clattenburg. Now, what I'd like you to do, and your listeners, is to say, who do you think's anywhere near Clattenburg?
Realistically, to me, the only one there is Mike Oliver, and possibly Anthony Taylor, possibly.
Yeah, but that's where we're at, and I wouldn't disagree. I think there's some good. I mean, like, I think there's some good referees that are coming through, but not enough. And therefore, I think there's a dearth of talent. And when it gets like that, the competition demands the best. Why weren't the Premier League, why weren't the board of directors of the PGMOL saying to Mike Riley, why isn't VAR operating? I'll tell you why. Because I don't think there was an energy for VAR in the Premier League. Year one, pitch side monitors positioned, never used. Year one. Year two, the boss says we're going to use them sparingly. They used them 3 times in 380 games. Last year, you and I know, because we're reasonably sensible people that love our game of football, we know that when that guy went and on the walk, whatever he'd given on the field of play is going to change. Because he's automatically going with a VAR operator. And you suddenly go, that is where I agree, you know, the old process.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why you've got to give Michael Oliver the dues he did the weekend, because obviously he was called over to the pitch side monitor, but he looked at the decision and he said, "No, I'm sticking with my decision." The referee should be able to do that. And Michael Oliver, I think we can probably count on one hand since the pitch side monitors come in where a referee is actually stuck by their own decision.
It's actually we're in the 4th season. It's less than 3.
Yeah,
it's less than 3. So the whole situation is that we're automatically accepting that the guy at Stockley Park's right and you as the referee is wrong. You know, so so if you've got that in the psyche of the referee, he's going to go at Newcastle and he's going to look at that screen and he's going to go, we know that he's going to rule it out. Before he's even looked at it, you knew that as he walks to the screen, he's going to rule it out. That's not right.
Yeah.
It's not right. And the reason it's not right is simple, right? Let me explain. A lot of refereeing decisions are subjective. They're not black and white. They're subjective. They are in the opinion of the referee. I can get referees in a room, like 50 referees, and I used to have 20 in a room regularly, right? Show the clips, and rarely did we get 20 referees agreeing that decision was right. We did at the end when we reviewed it, discussed it, and all that went with it, because we were learning from each other. But you might get 70-30. So that's why you need referees to be able to go to the game and actually look at the decision.
Yeah. I know where you're coming from, because obviously, as I said, it wasn't just about VAR that we were going to talk about on the show anyway, but a couple of things, obviously, that it was just an interesting one here that Jolly Toon Life put on the comment here. Says, I don't agree with that, Keith. Sorry. Look at the Man City game last year when the keeper brought down Fraser in the box and he had a perfect view. That was Martin Atkinson who was the official on that day. And it was as blatant as you can see. Now, we actually discussed this in our previous show.
Yes.
And I do actually have a still of the actual tackle itself, if I just dig it up here. And I think the actual decision was that it was classed, Martin Atkinson gave it was because it was an off-the-ball incident. That, you know, he was nowhere near the ball. And I was thinking, to me, I was thinking, so does that mean if someone's turned or whatever, can you go around and just take somebody else out because it's okay because there's no ball involved or anything like that? But
I mean, often an explanation is given, and I want to throw something at the wall because
I think a lot of us did on that one as well. To be fair,
look. I do it almost every week when I listen to Dermot Gallagher. I do, honestly. And Dermot's a lovely guy, and I don't, you know, it was a good referee, but I don't agree with him often.
To be fair, that's actually highlighted by the yesterday morning's when he was on Sky Sports X. We were briefly talked about before we went on air about his thought process for the Newcastle incident. where both myself and yourself, Keith, we actually looked at the Crystal Pass when we were thinking, well, if that isn't classed as a goal, then the worst case scenario is it's a penalty for Newcastle.
Correct.
Which even then, to be fair, is a disadvantage for Newcastle, because the advantage that Crystal Palace may have is they might save the penalty. So obviously that's the disadvantage. There's no way that I don't understand how he could even the thought process he went through to get to the decision he did.
Well, because he's paid by the PGMOL, and he doesn't want to.
He should still be able to voice his opinions correctly, though, and
absolutely. But look, that's not the case. I mean, I can quote week after week after week where he makes some comments, and I think, just a minute, and I'm not Mr. Clever Dick. I'm just actually. I find that I'm more in agreement with Mark Elsie on a regular basis, because we see the game as it's seen. So what he's saying is, what he did say was, that's a penalty kick. I'm saying that the top referees are the ones that hold on to the whistle a bit and then almost apply an advantage. It's in the back of the net. I'm giving a goal. And that's what you would expect from a referee.
Yeah, well, that's what they do outfield. If they saw a foul, they would play the advantage. See if any advantage comes of it. And to be fair, how quick that short little moment was on Saturday at Newcastle, I don't even think the referee had a chance to put the whistle to his mouth.
Well, of course he didn't. So the answers are nonsense.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree with you, Keith.
And I noticed a comment where they don't agree with Bowen. Bowen, look, the goalkeeper has dived at the feet of the player. The player has taken defensive action by jumping over him. He doesn't drag his feet into the player. It's not a foul. And okay, it's a difference of opinion. This is what you get. But let me tell you that if I got referees in a room, 99 would say that's a goal.
Yeah.
And it is a goal. And therefore, that's why they've said they got it wrong. They got it wrong because they weren't a foul. So yeah. I think ultimately at the end of the day, these decisions, right or wrong, should be reviewed, right? And the best way to review them is on the big screen in the stadium. And then that 4 minutes doesn't feel like 4 minutes because you're concentrating on the big screen and you're listening to what the referee said. That's what happens in rugby. And do you know what happens in rugby? There's a reluctance to use it. So as a result of that, when they do use it, invariably, they come to the right decision. Whereas at the moment, we've got a hot potato where we've got lazy refereeing because we stand back, and I'm sure Michael Salisbury's a nice guy. He's probably saying, well, it's not my fault, Lee Mason. He didn't give me the right information. What Nigel Owens says to me 2 years ago is, you've got to ensure that the referees take ownership of the decision because they are the match referee. So let us not castigate the VAR. Let's castigate the referee and the system that Mike Riley's put in place to get us in this position where VAR is not working.
Yeah.
It's not good because next week it's the same. And it gets worse. It gets worse because, okay, the first couple of 3 games in the Premier League, you're feeling your way through. There isn't that there's an intensity. It's not the same level. But as soon as that you pop up and you get into the 10th game and then the league begins to form and you're suddenly towards the bottom end, every decision that's been made incorrectly, you go back and reflect because you're now in danger of relegation.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, the manager's being fired on decisions that have been made incorrectly by the referee. That's why when I was an amateur referee in the professional game, I went to Sir Dave Richards and said, could I please have professional refereeing? Because the game's getting quicker. We need to be better. And your listeners, when I left the PGMOL, I was spending 5 million. Right? That figure now is 23 million. So it's not a small amount of money that's been put into refereeing.
And I think a lot of people would probably think that the state of officiating since you've left has decreased rapidly in that spell, and they're paying nearly 5 times as much for it.
Yeah. Well, I think that, but people say, when I say it, they go, "Oh, you've got a chip on your shoulder." I've no chip. I retired. I took on another role. What I do think is that it's incumbent upon us to have the best referees in the world. I used to run the line for Pat Partridge and Peter Willis. And I even run the line for George Courtney. These were not just referees, they were outstanding referees. Peter Willis never got a FIFA badge. He was never given European Cup games. He went with me to AEK Athens. He was my assistant. But, I look at them referees and I think to myself, who lives up to Courtney now? And the Northeast has a great reputation of producing some top-class referees.
Yeah, I've got to say, I've got a good friend of mine who I know really well, is Alan Wilkie, who we all know is famous for sending off Eric Cantona for the kick at Selhurst Park and everything like that.
I mean, look, Alan Wilkie was a very good referee, but also a very good educator, a very good referee coach, a very good assessor, and a great communicator, right? Where is he in this lot with the PGMO? I don't know. Where is Jeff Winter? You might, Jeff Winter was a fine referee, not liked all the time. Because
I know Newcastle fans weren't keen on him.
Well, of course not.
He's a Middlesbrough lad, though, to be fair.
Well, I know. But at the end of the day, I can tell you he was a bloody good referee. He was a good referee. And so I think that I look at some of the referees today, some are new on the list and offer good potential. I think one of it is a light on the horizon, Howard Webb arriving, because he is a good communicator and he will give good advice to these referees and he'll stimulate Oliver, hopefully, because we want Michael Oliver to have the big games like Mark Clattenburg. We want Oliver to go to a World Cup final and be in with a shout for the final. He's that good a referee.
Yeah.
And he retains his human side and love of the game, the passion. You can see it when he's refereeing. Some people sometimes think that's arrogance, but his foundation is built on his fitness, his movement, his positioning. And I'll tell you, I don't know what he thought when somebody said you better go to the VAR and have a look at the monitor. I just wonder what Michael's thought processes were walking to the monitor. He's probably, I'd be saying, what the bloody hell am I doing here? And I may be even saying to the VAR, get stuff, mate, I'm not going. And I think that's what we've got to have, a bit of that with our referees. And I think, look, I mean, I can once remember a linesman giving me a big offside and I was almost opposite and he's got this wrong. Definitely got this wrong. And as I'm walking across, I'm replaying it in my own mind. And I got up to him and I went, I'll tell you what, 15 minutes to go. Keep enjoying it. Walked away from him. Everybody thought, oh, he's discussing with the referee the offside decision and all that. I've gone, I'm not ruling the goal out. It's a goal. I overruled him. But I think that's part of the trust that you develop and the teamwork you develop. But I mean, yeah. I think that I thought we were getting off this season to a reasonable start, and then Saturday came and it was a disaster. It's the worst Saturday I can, I mean, you've got that list, I've got a list, and then I've got another list.
And I've got another list as well, actually.
because when you've been years assessing referees' performances, you look for other aspects of performance. You're actually doing almost a microscopic review of what's good, what habits that referee's got, you know, and then the courage. Because on Saturday, I think Andy Madley is a good referee. I think he's planted. He's come into the list. And he's doing a good job. But he didn't need Jared Gillett coming in to rule that West Ham goal out. And the reward for Gillett, who's a good referee, competent, the reward is he's going to be refereeing another game this weekend.
Yeah. So I agree, Pops. You know, you need to be stood down as well, because at the end of the day, it was his decision that actually brought the, you know, as you said, Andy Madley had to go over to the box and rule out. But yeah, I also agree. It's the point where I still think this. You know, you look at the Michael Salisbury one where you think he wasn't shown the angle of the, you know, which clearly showed you the push. So you can sort of be a little bit more lenient with Michael Salisbury to a degree.
Yes.
But for Andy Madley, he then went along with the Jared Gillett decision. Yeah. He should be man of the turn and say, because I looked when I first saw that, I literally thought all Board has done it. It's more like a toe tap as he's gone over. He's more brushed Mendy, and Mendy's acted like he's had a heart attack, and it's like ridiculous, really. And Bourne's done everything to get out of the way and not to hurt the player, and it's literally he's dragged his toe and literally tapped him as he went over, and basically Mendy's bought the VAR referee. Technically,
see, what you've got. You've got this. This is why I mentioned leadership and guidance, because the mentality is that when a referee is going to the technical area to look at the monitor, he's saying in his own mind that guy must be right, and I think he's viewing it not with the detail that he should be viewing it. He's already he's planted in his mind, I've got it wrong, therefore I'm going to overturn it. And therefore, that subjective decision goes away from him instead of him arguing his corner.
Can I actually ask, because obviously you have more experience with this, Keith, obviously still speaking to people who are referees. When a referee sees, like, say, for example, the goal on Saturday for Newcastle, is Michael Salisbury on the microphone saying, look, I'm going to award that goal. Is there anything that is he making the decision to say, is there anything that, or is it only VAR come in and say, you need to come and have a look at this? Because for me, I think they should do it like, as we've talked about a little bit earlier with Nigel Owens. Nigel Owens will turn and say, look, I'm going to award the goal. Is there anything for me to see to otherwise change that? And then obviously you would go through that process. For me, I think that process needs to be like the referee needs to make the first call when a decision says, look, I think there's a foul there. It could be a red card. Can you check that while I'm playing on? And then obviously he's asked for the VAR help rather than VAR interrupting or what's going on, because that feels like, as you said, it's taken the decision away from the referee himself. And VAR are doing it.
Yeah. I mean, it's the VAR that comes in. So it's not the process of the referee. And I understand to some degree why that is, because, as I've said before, there are times when you don't see the incident. And the reason being somebody's run across your vision line. You're not in the right position. You're out. You're caught out. The pace of the game has caught you out, no matter how fit you are. A long ball, you can't keep up with it. So I think there has to be one of trust here. But ultimately, what you've got to be saying to the team of officials, the referee is the decision maker, and we've got to get these things right. And the only way you can do that is through good communication. And the only way you'll get improvement is for less of VAR, not more. Don't come in. If it's not absolutely nailed on that he's got it wrong, then it's not clear and obvious.
Yeah.
It wants to hitting you on the nose and giving you a bloody nose, really, to say, I need you in. You know, and they've got to be, you know, if you look at the subjective decisions, let's take the Arsenal Man United game, Man United Arsenal at the weekend. In that first half, Paul Tierney played an absolutely brilliant advantage. There was a foul. He played the advantage. It went for some distance, goal resulted.
Yeah, I watched the game, so I know it was
the great referee.
Yeah, to be fair, I actually agreed with him because I thought I at first glance I didn't think it was a foul. To be fair, I still don't really think it was a foul. I thought it was very soft. But
look, when you start looking at this, when you start examining decisions in slow motion, you get a distorted view. You really do get a distorted view, and that's why I think the last time you see that incident must be at normal speed. You can't come away from that screen making your decision on a slow motion, because see, I don't think on that goal by Arsenal that the referee was close enough to it. He'd made his decision, right? He allowed play to continue. He didn't see it as a foul. Off they go. What did he do? They come right back to the halfway line and then start playing the slow-mo and playing it again and playing it again. And what happens is the process up here says, you'll be now beginning to think, I've got it wrong. It's easier to go with VAR and say it's a free kick than it is to actually hold your corner. So for me, we only use VAR when it's absolutely clear. And it's not clear that it's a foul. Now, I've had a Man United fan saying to me today, yeah, it was dead clear. I was at the match and all that. And I'm going, but Tierney is not a bad referee. And he's made a judgment based on what he's seen on this raised bar, which is a bit of a nonsense anyway. And away we go. But he's ruled the ball out. He's ruled a good goal out.
Yeah, I agree. And the funny thing is, Keith,
interference.
Yeah. The funny thing is as well, Keith, that VAR for the Man United Arsenal game was also Lee Mason again.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's two goals in a weekend that he's ruled out.
Yeah.
Really good goals that could have swung games totally different ways. And he's, obviously Arsenal would have took the lead at Man United, and obviously that would have changed the game. Newcastle would have took lead, and obviously, you can't necessarily say Newcastle would hold down to win 1-0 because tactics change and stuff like that. But that's two goals, goals that should have stood, that have been ruled out.
But isn't it easy to make it's dead easy to make a decision sat in a room in Stockley Park with no crowd, no accountability. You make and a clinical decision. It's easy. There's no feel. You at the very highest level, you want referees who are part of the process of facilitating a good game, not interfering, allowing a bit, taking a bit. We don't want, do we, forensic judgment on every game. I mean, we're getting that to a nonsense degree on offsides.
Yeah. I think the easiest way, if you go back to the Man United one we just talked about, the easiest way to discuss that one, Keith, is if we're talking about, you said the biggest problem that you feel is the communication aspect between the referee and the VAR. For that one on Sunday, because obviously the easiest way I would look at it is Paul Tierney awards the goal and he says, look, I don't think there was a foul there. That's his decision. And VAR, he should say, is there a clear and obvious foul there that I've missed? And all Lee Mason should say is, it isn't clear and obvious. Yes, there's contact, but it's minimal. It wasn't a bad force or anything like that. You can stick with your decision. And yes, the Man United fans would have been disappointed by that. But that's where the referee. I think that's what we said. The referee has to take charge of the game, reword little things towards VAR rather than VAR controlling the game.
Well, we've got, haven't we? Currently, we've got VARs becoming more important on the big decisions than the match referee.
Yeah,
and ultimately, at the end of the day, that's not the refereeing that I want to see. I don't think you want to see. I don't think anybody does. What we want is the guy who thumps his opponent off the ball and nobody's seen it to face the retribution that law says. And somebody comes in and says, you've missed somebody. He's just swiped out somebody. He needs to be sent off. You need somebody who says, that's a penalty kick. And penalty kicks are instinctive. you know, they're given with a bit of the heart. They're given with like the position and all that goes with it. And so, you know, you look at the Leeds thing. He's made the good call in not penalising the pull of the shirt, and he's not given the penalty. So why didn't he give the free kick then for the shirt pull outside the penalty area? That's the question that I'd be asking. Talk me through that situation. You seem to be ideally positioned. What did you see? And the guy says, well, I saw the challenge. It was okay. And it went in the box. It was okay. I was quite happy. Away we went. And then I'd say, let's have a look at the video. Look at that. The shirt is very clear. Why didn't you penalise that? There's now a tripping offence, a careless challenge by the defender. He's brought the player down. Talk me through why you didn't give a penalty kick. You know, what involvement did the VAR have? And I'd be asking the same question to the VAR. You have to interrogate and find out why. You know, Newcastle United have every right to say, why was this wrong? You know, we know it's wrong. They've admitted it's wrong. What are they going to do about it? What's going to happen? You know, I mean, that's where, you know, the ultimate aim is, and people are not going to like this in refereeing, but I'd be saying, right, if you get sent off for a violent act as a player, you miss 3 games. We've got to get into that mode, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
We've just got to say, you're not going to be appointed. We don't have to go public on it. You know, we just have to say, you're not having a game for 3 weeks, so go away and work with the coaches, get your act together and improve. And here's the first warning letter, because you're employed. You know, I used to employ salesmen, and they got a target to reach in terms of sales. And if they were struggling to get near that target, I'd make certain I'd give them all the operational advice, support, even campaigns to get more business to keep that guy. But ultimately, I'm now on the process of warning letter, final warning letter, dismissal. And you don't want to go there, but you've got to say that unless they make changes, we're never going to get back to where we were with refereeing. You know, I've got colleagues. I mean, I run a junior team. I mean, I'm president of a league, but I'm also president of Penistone Church. You know, and we have 30 teams, so we have a variable sort of mix of referees, and I want those referees to enjoy what they do. But they come to me and said, you know, they're coming to me and saying, did you see that decision? How bad was that? And I said, would you do that in that environment? No. So the standard is very clearly set for English refereeing, and that is Oliver and Taylor, and the others have got a limited time frame to get up to that mark, a limited period. And you got to say 3 years should be enough. And if they're not making it and cutting it in 3 years and getting to that standard, then you try someone else.
Yeah.
So you've got to have this. You've got to have this churn. You've got to be dealing. Look, Eddie Howe likes some players, but at the end of the day, he might offload some at the end of the season because they've not delivered what he expects them to deliver. Well, that's the same in refereeing, surely, isn't it? But
it's in all walks of life, as you said.
Correct.
You know, it's in sales, it's in, you know, customer service, because obviously you've got to deliver good customer service. If you don't, obviously, to every walk of life, not just football.
But you know, we're in the entertainment industry at the level we're at, the elite level. It's a massive entertainment business. You're right, billions of pounds that clubs have forked out. We all love watching it. we all want accuracy. We know that human beings make errors. So technology has to come into the game to help that process. But we have to use it better than we're using it at the moment and not rely on it.
Yeah.
And, 2 years ago, Nigel Owens said to me, it'll develop lazy refereeing. And, I've seen 1 or 2 incidents already this season where a referee on the edge of the penalty area has got a foul in front of him. He's taken no action because he's waited for the VAR to come in. And on 2 occasions, well, I've now seen 3 incidents with the weekend. On the 3 incidents, on 2 occasions, the VAR's come in and given the decision after review. And this weekend, nothing happened because the VAR didn't come in on what was a nailed-on penalty kick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
I think the one thing we can all agree in regards to VAR, it's the technology is there to help, and that's the technology is not at flaw. It's the people that's implementing it. So just before we end up the show, because obviously I'm aware of the time, and obviously what I want to do is, as I mentioned, Keith, I've got another list as well. So obviously you mentioned you didn't think there was much decisions so far bad that were this season, but what I want to do is just to go over. Newcastle have played 7 games this season, and that's including the Carabao Cup tie at Tranmere as well. Now, I just want a quick roundup, so we'll skip through them because obviously it's nearly an hour and a half into the show, just to get your brief thoughts on them and what you would have done and what should have happened. Because the only game that we haven't had anything controversial was our opening day game against Nottingham Forest. Now, our second game this season was against Brighton away. Now, I think it was about the 14th, 15th minute in the first half. Callum Wilson had a goal ruled out for a high foot. And this is I don't know if you've seen the picture at all, but this is the pic I've got it here for you.
Yeah.
Now, Graham Scott gave, Callum Wilson went on, scored from here, but Graham Scott had actually blown up for a foul for endangering a player. Now, for me, I wouldn't class that as endangering a player because you probably look at a clear yard between foot and head there.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, which was a week later for Erling Haaland against Crystal Palace, I can understand that one being given as a booking because, and to be fair, there was debate about that could have been a red card. So going back to the Wilson one,
so
would you have the goal out?
That first one, right? The first one is it can come under the banner of a yellow card and deemed as an act that's reckless, right? So the referee can interpret that as being reckless because the foot, although it's got distance, right, it could still be deemed reckless in terms of the safety. It's not endangering the safety of an opponent, that, because there's no contact with the head. So I think the referee, I could justify the referee giving a yellow. In the Haaland case, that for me was a red, and I said it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So with the Callum Wilson one, would you have ruled the goal out?
If I'm saying
he wasn't booked in the decision.
The danger here
the game was just used. The goal was just ruled out.
The danger is, right, what the referee's done here, he's gone for safety referee to rule the goal out. He's judged that as reckless. Now, what we've got is that's the one where VAR needs to have a look, right, to determine exactly where the foot is, where the opponent's head is, and the movement of the opponent. And then, in that situation, he might say, if we look at the video, I'm going to point to the centre circle. Mm. This is where you need clarification through a video review.
See, the one reason why that one didn't go to VAR, because what happened was Graham Scott actually blew the whistle literally as the ball was just about to hit the back of the net. So obviously, VAR technically then couldn't intervene.
No, that's right.
But
did he give a yellow card?
No, he just gave the foul, just the foul. So there was no card involved. It was just literally that he blew he said it was a foul for endangering a player. That was it. So the next decision that I also see is on that one. Yeah, the next decision was in the Man City game. Now, what I will say is here that VAR was implemented twice correctly, and it benefit Newcastle. So I am giving the dues to VAR here, because the Miguel Almiron goal was originally not given for offside, and then obviously when you play back the replay, you could clearly say it was a goal and it was award. Fantastic. That's what VAR is for.
Correct. And I remember that.
You also go to the Kieran Trippier foul as well, which everybody thought it was, what you would class as a cynical foul, not endangering, like what you'd say, you take one for the team sort of thing, a yellow card. And then obviously Jared Gillett branded the red card straight away, was asked to go over to VAR, reviewed it, and then, which I thought was the correct decision. So for me, hands up, VAR done correctly, proves it can work if implemented correctly. The other incident in the same game was literally just on the stroke of half time. Now, obviously, sometimes, as you said, when we look at VAR, stills don't show the actual incident, and obviously it's sometimes best to watch things in full flow. Now, I was actually at the game, and I actually saw this happen full on. So this was actually John Stones. The ball came in from the centre circle, and it was literally in the far, if you look at the 18 box, in the right corner of the box, the 18-yard box. Now, Shaw was underneath the ball, and John Stones literally just charged in from the left. But
I remember that one. It was a penalty kick.
Yeah, I thought it was, because what I actually thought, no, this picture doesn't show it still. John Stones actually led with the elbow.
Yes, he did.
When he went in. I think the one thing that saved John Stones in this one was because Fabian Shaw, obviously, he got winded at the same time by John Stones' legs are wrapped around him. He didn't go down holding his head for the elbow, so he probably got a little bit of luck. Sorry, Johnson got a little bit of luck because Fabian Shaw was more honest. And I think that's probably why the VAR didn't give it. But for me, the intent was lead with the arm, which is obviously towards the head. That's endangering. You could even turn around. There was no card given either. So you could possibly say, should a card have been awarded as well as the penalty? Yeah.
I thought it was a penalty, that.
Yeah. Then we go to the the Tranmere game the midweek after the Man City game, and now this one obviously was a League Two. I wasn't aware of who the referee was. I'd never seen before, because obviously I'm not familiar with lower league referees. But there was two horrendous decisions, and obviously one of them has led to someone actually being got a long-term injury with the ACL's injury, so they're out for 9 months. That's Emil Crafter was to a late challenge. And obviously he's now probably going to be out for the whole season. But the worst decision was actually later on the first, so just before the stroke of half time, where there was a tackle from the Tranmere striker on Carl Darlow. Now the referee only gave a yellow card for this, and obviously there was no VAR included in the game at the time. This was obviously the level of the League Cup. But if you look at this image here, the striker's gone in with his right leg. And it's literally under his kneecap, and you can even see the bend in Carl Darlow's leg. Now, I don't understand now. Bear in mind that this is probably a similar sort of angle that the referee would get if he's positioned correctly in the centre of the pitch. He should be able to see that all day long. That is a red. That would a red card, in my opinion.
I agree.
Cool. So we're getting on well here, Keith. We're in the same sort of boat here. We're doing all right here, aren't we? Now we get to the. So we get to the Wolves game next, and then the Wolves one, we've got this one. Another for us, that's another blatant penalty, and it wasn't even looked at by VAR.
Look, I remember that one. I commented on it. I've written about that. That was a penalty kick. Absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. I mean, there was a comment came out. I don't know who made it. Somebody said it wasn't a strong enough pull. That was a spokesperson either from the Premier League or the PGMOL. And I've gone, who is this spokesperson? Because the laws of the game on pulling is quite clear. That's a definite penalty kick. Nailed on.
Yeah, I agree. Now, I'll also, as I said, I do give VAR dues where it's called. And also in the same game, there was two more VAR calls that went Newcastle's way. And to be fair, I do believe they were correctly called. There was the one where the referee it went for a foul by Fabian Shaw. I think it was on Pedro Neto, where the referee just gave a foul and a yellow card. VAR looked at it to try and award a possible red card on it. Luckily, they didn't agree there was a red card there. To me, I agree. I thought it was a yellow card. There wasn't any intent. It was more, you could see the foot coming down to it as though he was planting on the floor and caught him as it came down. So I agreed with that. But also the fact that they ruled out what would have been Wolves' second goal when there was the clear push on Ryan Fraser as the ball was cleared. Obviously, the referee, which I believe was Peter Banks, which we've had history before with as well. But he obviously played the game. Didn't think anything. I still don't know how he didn't see the foul to start with, because someone doesn't go that far, that much of a distance just by falling. Obviously, you could clearly see there was a clear. And to be fair, from where you look at the push, you would expect your linesman to see that, in my opinion, as well. It shouldn't have got to the VAR decision, but luckily VAR intervened. The goal was ruled out, and the correct decision was given. So once again, VAR, that highlights why VAR is there.
I think you make an interesting point.
When it's,
you make an interesting point, because what we have seen in the last 2 seasons is a reduction of involvement of the assistant referee in the game as a whole. Where I don't know if that's somebody advising them or not, but I do think there are occasions when we would expect a flag, in my day, from the assistant to be supportive, to inform. And there are on occasions like this where we're not getting them, because I think they've been told, keep your flag down, let the VAR and the referee sort it.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one.
I just get that feel. I've nothing to confirm that, but we see a reduced involvement, and we had we've still got some outstanding assistant referees, but we're not using them as well as we could in the game.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. And what I'll do is, obviously, we discussed the Crystal Palace one earlier on in depth, but I wanted to take you back to last Wednesday night, when we played at Anfield against Liverpool. Now, once again, we had issues at Liverpool last year. We've got issues again this year. Now, I wanted to get your opinion on the first one, which was where VAR came in. And I've got 2 examples of an offside goal here. One was given, one wasn't. We'll look at the Alexander Isak one, which obviously that's the distance that you saw from the main screen with BT Sport. But if we'll try to zoom in as close as you can on here. Yeah. Now, from here, I actually watched the game live, and I was sat there in the pub with it. And the main issue I found out about this was you didn't see any of the decision process making that you normally see, where you get the picture, you see the lines drawn, and then the line up. None of that was drawn in this game. No. All you actually saw was the game was just said, no, the goal was disallowed, offside, the game to play on. And about 2 minutes afterwards, they showed you the still, which for me is wrong. And then I think this is why as you mentioned, people start to think, where's the accountability held here? Because, and then people start to use that word of, and I don't like banding it about, but I know a lot, it has been used, and I can understand some people's point of view, where they start to think, is there this big 6 decision and getting decisions against the other 14 teams? And I don't know that you might not know that, but it doesn't help. Do you know what I mean? I think if you look at the week before, Keith,
they've sort of said this year that they're not going to show the line. So what you're actually seeing is you're seeing the television bit rather than the broadcast. Line. I have to tell you, I remember that one, and that's offside.
This one, the Man United Liverpool one the previous week.
I thought that was offside.
Okay, so what did you make of the Alexander Isak one then?
Yeah, well, see, I have a philosophy on this, and despite the lawmakers and everything, I operated and I instigated with Philip Don. The benefit of the doubt on offsides this close should go with a forward.
Okay.
And it's painfully evident to me, because of my involvement in goal line technology, where we have 7 cameras at 500 frames per second, which is far faster than broadcast speed. Broadcast speed will give us a false reading on offside decisions. There's a tolerance level in terms of the camera speed, picking up the kick of the ball and where the players are and whether they're active or not. It's a complicated procedure. And I smile now because, of course, they're going to bring AI in, and they're going to bring in semi-automated offside. We're going to see it in the Champions League, I think, shortly, where we might get these tight calls, but we'll get more accurate calls, because here we're relying on not a computer-generated image. We're relying on someone drawing a line that has a thickness that's sufficient to make the decision inaccurate. It's not good enough to rule out goals by just drawing those lines.
Yeah. See, I think what
we're getting is the reality is we can go week in, week out for the remainder of the season with these decisions and have an inconsistency in terms of the decision. Because sometimes we're drawing it at the feet, but remember now, they can score with a forehead or they can score with a shoulder. And the shoulder can be in advance of. And of course,
I think this is where Newcastle fans were a bit concerned, because obviously it's clear that the foot's behind the defender's foot. But even when, and obviously this is why we were concerned, because we didn't see the line drawn like you normally see when you're watching live TV.
You see, if you take that image,
you don't even know where the red line's lined up with.
Well,
you can't even see it on there. Is it with his shoulder?
No,
is it his knee? Is it his?
But you don't know whether, from the angle that you've got, whether the shoulder. I think generally the foot is in line with the head. The shoulder might be forward of the foot. Are you with me?
I know. Yeah, I think it's because nobody saw it. It's so close. Do you know what I mean? To be fair, I still think it's onside, but that could be being biased. I'm a Newcastle fan.
We're in the entertainment business, and we're ruling out good goals.
Yeah, that's what I think.
And what do we pay to watch? Goals.
Yeah.
You know,
as you said, you need to give advantage to the attackers.
Why does it take so long? Why do we need to check every goal when we know that the majority of them are okay? Why do we need somebody saying, "Oh, just a minute, I'll review everything. Wait on, don't celebrate. You're going to get a chance in a minute or two because I'm going to check it all." Do we need that? Do we really want that? And this is where the managers, the coaches, the Premier League, the referees organisation get their heads together and determine how the laws are interpreted for the benefit of the game, not the benefit of referees and the benefit of technology. This is not clear and obvious, is it?
No,
if we're using technology in the other sides of the field and on clear and obvious, this is not clear and obvious. The benefit of the doubt should go to the forward. But let's see how AI is going to deal with these in the upcoming months at the World Cup and the Champions League.
Yeah, I think that'll be great. And there's one final one to finish on, Keith, before I let you go. And it's in the same game, and you'll know exactly what it is. I think this is where when I went before about Andre Mariner Newcastle fans might agree.
That's why I mentioned Andre Mariner.
Yeah, and what I've actually called this image, because obviously Alex Ferguson used to get Fergie time. Well, this is definitely Klopp time. Now, obviously, it was what said that, and let's be clear and get this straight for anyone who's watching. Now, when the board goes up for stoppage time, it is a minimum of. So we know it's a minimum of 5 minutes. So let's clear that up straight away.
Yeah.
Now, obviously when you go over that, it's for anything that might happen during the stoppages. So Nick Pope went down for about 30 seconds in the stoppage time.
Yeah.
So that would realistically, at a push to me, would take you to 6 minutes stoppage time.
Yeah.
So obviously, and then it came down here that Liverpool scored the winner in the 97th minute and 14 seconds.
Yeah.
So what I would like to know from your point of view here, Keith, is why was it not blown up earlier? Because obviously it had gone over the allocated time. because even when we were in the pub watching it, we all turned around and looked at it, goes, and one of the lads who normally does the show with us, he was there, he was over from Ireland, and he turned around, even before stoppage time turned around, he went, I reckon they'll be playing about 7 minutes of stoppage time. So when 5 minutes came up, he was like, oh, I'm a bit shocked. He says, and it kept on. He goes, I'm telling you now, he will continue playing until they score. And sure enough, the last thing that happened was they scored before he blew up. Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm the believer of that. When you're playing football, you know, things can happen until you blow the final whistle. And Eddie Howe's even said, yes, they potentially should have defended the situation better. Yeah. But for me, that situation should never have arose anyway.
Yeah. What the answer that I've got, because I do share your concerns on timing of games, because you're actually getting around about 50, 55 minutes of playing time. You're paying for 90 minutes and getting 50, 55. That's the reality. So the game as a whole, the playing side, the officiating side, they need to understand that they've got a problem, but they're not addressing it. So for me, the answer is the laws of the game say the sole timekeeper is the referee. So even if I'm the boss of the PGMOL, right, there's little I can do when a referee does what Andre Marina does and plays over. Because like you, I had a system that gave me the amount of time lost, gave me the amount of actual playing time. And often the referees were playing a lot short than they should do. There was probably 5-6 minutes, they were playing 3 or 4. The point I'm getting to is quite simply, the last 5 years plus, I've been saying that the game needs an independent timekeeper. We take the timing of the game completely away from the referee, and the league employs independent timekeepers, just like in boxing. Deal with it just like in hockey, and we come to a basic procedure that takes timing away from referees, because I think they play at it. I mean, I watched the game over the weekend, and I said to someone that was on the phone watching the game, this is how much added time he's going to have in the first half. This is how much time he's going to have in the second half. And I just said he's played 2 minutes. I said 2 minutes in the first, 4 in the second. I'm not a gambling guy. Somebody said you could have a bet on that. And I go, well, I don't gamble, but that's exactly what happened. And I had the need for 8 minutes in the second half and 5 in the first. Right. So I was stopping the watch because it's annoying. It's annoying.
It is. I think that. I think it was.
Isn't it better for a referee to say I'm going to play 7 minutes and play 7 rather than 5 and add it? Because what amazes me is, I know you can talk about substitutes and all that. There's more subs in the second half than first and all that, but it's disjointed. The timing of games is inconsistent, disjointed. Take it away from the referee, give it an independent timekeeper. The sooner the better.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting points on that one was obviously Andre Mariner had allowed 5 minutes with a stoppage time for a 45-minute half. But then Alan Shearer, obviously Newcastle born and bred, and he actually replied to the tweet, obviously, when that came out, that, so how on earth can you allow 3 minutes from 5 minutes, an extra 3 minutes from the 5 minutes, which is 60%. So it was interesting, the take on that. So, but do you know what? I've really enjoyed the conversation we've had tonight, Keith, because obviously I'm aware of the time now, and we've probably overrun a little bit more than we thought, but I'd like to say thank you very much for joining us. I'll let you get off now while obviously I'll do a bit of housekeeping to finish the show. But much appreciated you joining us again. We always enjoy the insight and getting the, your point of view on stuff that's everything around refereeing, officiating, VAR, etc. So hopefully, and don't take this the wrong way, Keith, we don't have to invite you back on the show again.
Oh, that's
I know, but you know what? If it ever does happen again, I'll give you a shout, and obviously we'll go from there. But Thanks, Keith, for joining us.
Pleasure.
Much appreciated. Good night.
Thank you. Thanks.
So, guys, I hope you enjoyed the talk there we went through there. As I said, we're only meant to do an hour show, so you've got some bonus content there. As you can see, there was so much that obviously you can still tell that Keith's really passionate about officiating. Obviously, he was there. And I suppose, him being head of the PGMOL for a point before, obviously, Mike Riley has taken over. It's in a way, it's his baby sort of thing, and you can understand why he gets aggrieved with how it's, how it's gone now and stuff like that. And I imagine it's really hard for him to see that they still won't take his advice and stuff like that, because it's clear to see he still has some fantastic views on officiating, and he's agreed it's the best league in the world, but the level of officiating is absolutely appalling. And I've seen in the chat, I've been trying to read as many as I can go through. It's quite hard to listen to Keith and go through all the comments. But yeah, I agree. There's some there saying bring them over from a different league. Then you've got completely neutral ones. The standard of refereeing, as he said, in Germany, in Italy, fantastic. They've always got a good VAR record as well. So look, as I've said, there needs to be a big change in VAR. There needs to be, Howard Webb coming in at the end of the year. It can't come soon enough. He needs to use his experience that he's had in the MLS. And I know we had a discussion on this on Twitter the other day where we mentioned, there was a thread that went out, and a lot of people thought that Howard Webb might be, he wasn't the best. He was a bit possibly corrupt towards Man United and stuff like that. But you don't get to referee a World Cup final or Champions League final if you're a bad referee. And the one bonus that everyone's got is the spotlight is going to be really focused on him when he takes over, because he's going to have to show change within the organisation because of how bad everything has been over recent years. And as I said, over the last 4 years of VAR, and it's got worse as it's gone on rather than got better, which is it's quite telling, unfortunately. And it's a shame because Newcastle, as I mentioned at the end there, look at the decision that Newcastle have been involved alone this season, and it's quite scary. And it shouldn't be like that. We should be going to games and talking about games, enjoying what happened, and not talking about, like we have since Saturday afternoon, since 5 o'clock, but probably 4:10 when the decision was made and ruled out. But we're still talking about it now, and we're probably still going to talk it in weeks and months to come as well. But just to round off the show, as I mentioned, thanks to everyone. I was keeping, there was a lot of people put TGR in the chat. If you've missed it, still get on before the show finishes. If you type in TGR into the chat and go and follow the Geordie Rise on Twitter, you will get entered into the draw to win the limited edition T-shirt that I showed at the start of the show. So remember, TGR in our chat, get over to Twitter and follow the Geordie Rise, and you'll be with a chance of winning a T-shirt tomorrow, which we'll announce on our Twitter feed. But before we go, I want to give a shout out to our fantastic sponsors. And first up, and I know Simon's been in the chat tonight. So Simon, once again, thanks enough for your support there. And obviously his brand, Shy Benz. It's obviously fantastic clothing range here. It's all based about mental health. Don't as I say, Shy Ben. Don't be Shy Ben. It's always better to talk. A problem shared, a problem halved. I know this. Martin knows that we've experienced it firsthand. I know Simon has as well. It's so important to talk, because if you don't talk, something that you think maybe a major problem could be easily resolved. So any of the profits from any of the stuff from Simon's brand at Shy Beds, all the profits do go to mental health organisations. So you can get yourself up the website at shybens.com. You've got some fantastic hats. Shy Ben's getting out, obviously North East State, I say it all the time as well. Obviously Simon has also done our loaded range as well. We've got various different ranges there. Don't get overloaded. Mag NUFC, all the various different colours there. We've also released the away days one, as Pete's saying is away days. We do love playing away, and it looks fantastic in the Brazilian yellow. And there might be a little surprise up there for a potential new line that's coming up that we discussed with Simon at the end of last week's away days. Then we got into pins and prints, and Dean's got some fantastic prints on there. You'll have seen them all online there. They've got the Eddie Howe's Black and White Army, Kieran Trippier's free kick from against Everton. Obviously, you get your classic shirt retro mixes, the 96-97. Obviously, the legend that is Sir Alan Shearer. Bruno's goal against Southampton for his back heel goal. They also did the range of pin badges as well with there's Hatton Ben Arthur, Jonas Gutierrez, and they've just released the new Craig Bellamy one for his goal against Feyenoord in the Champions League. Then we've also got Martin Machine House, local Newcastle brand, quality care, casual clothing, all smart casual stuff you can wear down the pub and stuff like that. Fantastic t-shirts. We will be giving some giveaways of these shortly. So head over to machinehouse.com and find some fantastic clothing there. And as we mentioned, our Daz mentioned last night, we've got a fantastic new sponsor in the Geordie Rise. They've joined us from this week as well. And Dean obviously couldn't join us in the channel. He's playing football tonight. But the Geordie Rise, it's all about, a Geordie brand wanting to make the most of it and to celebrate what's going to happen with Newcastle going forward from between the takeover and what's going to happen going forward. He wants everyone to celebrate together. And just a little bit of a description of how he describes the brand for anybody who wants to know what it is. And he's just said that Geordie Rise is a fan site and apparel brand aiming to document and celebrate all that is great about the club, the city, and the region as we rise to the top where we truly belong. So there's a description for the name and also the brand. So get yourself over to the Geordie Rise on Twitter. Obviously, you follow the link on the page there and you'll get through. As you can see, some fantastic designs on here. And the good-looking gentleman that's on the picture in the promo there is Uggy, who we do actually get in the chat from time to time, all the way from Australia. So the T-shirts are always all down there as well. It does state at the top there, you do get 10% off if you use the code LOADEDHQ. That is actually getting changed because for some reason, Dean forgot that we changed the name to Loaded Mag. So once that gets changed around, likely the sponsors, if you type in Loaded Mag in the discount code box at the checkout, you will get a 10% off your order. Okay, as I said, we've got the draw for the limited edition T-shirt, which is this one here, the black one shows better on the model here, and the back one with the Acid Man with the black and white eyes, and it's literally to celebrate 1 year on from the takeover. So this actually will be released sometime in October, but we have got a T-shirt to give away now to one lucky winner, which we will do tomorrow. So thank you very much for joining us. I know it's obviously been a long show, a bit longer than we thought, but as you can tell, Keith's really passionate about it, the conversation about officiating in the Premier League. And I'd like to say thank you very much for everyone joining us and sticking with us through that show. But we will be back on Thursday. Pete will be back with Dan Lawless from the West Ham TV podcast for away days on Thursday. I don't know the time at the minute. I imagine it'll either be 7:30 or 8 o'clock, but you will find out any notifications on that on Twitter on the morning. And then we will be joined back on Sunday night for the West Ham reaction game. So me and the lads will be back for that. So that's what we've got coming up. Anything else we might be able to start in the meantime, we will drop on Twitter and also online. But once again, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you all enjoyed the chat with Keith. And as I said, we will see you towards the end of the week. Good night, everyone.